My heart died with her. It will never love again. I said those words to myself every morning. Every single morning for the past 2 years, standing by Sarah's grave, holding the wilted flowers that couldn't bring her back. The headstone was simple, just her name and the dates that marked a life too short. Sarah Elizabeth Turner, beloved wife. But what the stone couldn't say was how she laughed at my terrible jokes, how she hummed while kneading bread, how her hand felt in mine during Sunday service. All of that died with her that winter night when the fever took her. The rain started again. It always seemed to rain when I visited her grave, like the heavens were crying with me. I pulled my hat lower and turned away from the cemetery. The mud squelched under my boots as I walked back toward town. Millbrook was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where widows got casseroles and widowers got pitying looks. I hated both. Mrs. Henderson from the Mercantile always asked if I was doing all right. Sheriff Coleman nodded with that careful expression that said he understood loss. I didn't want their understanding. I wanted to be left alone. My boots echoed on the wooden sidewalk as I passed the church. Through the windows I could see families gathered for Wednesday evening service. Children fidgeting in pews while their mothers shushed them, fathers with their arms around their wives. I used to be one of those fathers. Used to sing hymns with Sarah's sweet voice harmonizing beside me. Used to believe that God had a plan for everything. Now I just believed in work and whiskey. The saloon doors swung open as I approached. Warm lights spilled onto the street, along with the sound of laughter and piano music. For a moment I hesitated. Going in meant conversation, meant pretending to be human instead of the hollow thing I'd become. But the alternative was going home to an empty house, to Sarah's rocking chair that still sat by the fireplace, to the bedroom where I slept alone on one side of a bed meant for two. So I pushed through the doors. The saloon was busy for a Wednesday night. Cowboys from the surrounding ranches, a few travelers passing through, some of the local men trying to forget their troubles in the bottom of a glass. I understood that impulse. Will Turner. The bartender Frank nodded as I approached. The usual. Make it a double. Frank poured the whiskey without comment. He was good that way. Never asked questions or offered advice. Just served drinks and minded his own business. I was halfway through my glass when she walked in. The woman was nothing like Sarah. Where my wife had been fair and delicate, this woman was dark-haired and sturdy-looking. She wore a simple brown dress that had seen better days, and she held the hand of a small child. The little girl couldn't have been more than 4 or 5. She had her mother's dark hair but lighter eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. The saloon grew quieter as they entered. It wasn't unusual for women to come looking for their husbands, but this woman seemed different. Lost, maybe, or desperate. She approached Frank at the bar. Her voice was soft but clear. "Excuse me, sir. I'm looking for work. Any kind of work. I can clean, cook, mend clothes." Frank scratched his beard. "Well now, Miss Sullivan. Hannah Sullivan. And this is my daughter, Emma." The little girl waved shyly at Frank, who smiled despite himself, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. A woman with a child was a harder sell than a woman alone. "I don't know of anything right now," Frank said gently. "But you might try the hotel. Mrs. Campbell sometimes needs help with the laundry." Hannah's shoulders sagged slightly. "Thank you. I'll try there." As they turned to leave, the little girl's eyes met mine across the smoky room. She smiled, a pure, innocent smile that hit me like a punch to the chest. For a moment I forgot to breathe, forgot where I was. All I could see was that trusting face, that open expression that hadn't yet learned to be afraid of the world. Then they were gone, disappearing into the night like they'd never been there at all. I drained my whiskey and ordered another, but the taste was bitter now, and the warmth it usually brought felt cold against the sudden ache in my chest. "Strangers?" Frank asked, refilling my glass. "Appears so. Hard thing traveling alone with a little one." I grunted non-committally. It wasn't my business. I had my own grief to carry without taking on someone else's troubles. But as I sat there in the yellow lamplight, listening to the piano player stumble through a melancholy tune, I couldn't shake the image of those bright eyes. Couldn't forget the way the child had smiled at me like she saw something worth smiling at. Sarah would have helped them, would have marched right over and offered food, shelter, whatever they needed. She'd always been soft-hearted that way, always seeing the good in people. But Sarah was gone, and the man she'd married, the man who would have helped without thinking twice, had died with her. The rain picked up outside, drumming against the windows like fingers tapping out a mournful song. I thought about the woman and her daughter out there somewhere in the storm, looking for shelter, looking for hope. I finished my drink and headed for the door. It wasn't my problem, and it couldn't be, because the man who once cared, who would have helped without thinking twice, had died with Sarah Turner 2 years ago. But what I didn't know was that some hearts only sleep, and sometimes all it takes to wake them is the sound of a child's laughter echoing in the darkness. The next morning brought no relief from the storm. Rain drummed against my cabin windows like restless fingers, and the gray sky promised more of the same. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at cold coffee and yesterday's bread. The silence was deafening. It had been 3 days since I'd seen the woman and her child at the saloon. 3 days of telling myself I'd done the right thing by walking away. 3 days of trying to forget those bright, trusting eyes. But forgetting wasn't as easy as I'd hoped. I needed supplies from town. Coffee was running low and my last bottle of whiskey sat empty on the shelf like a reproach. The ride to Millbrook would take me past the hotel, past the Mercantile, past all the places where decent folks helped each other without thinking twice about it. The places I used to belong. My horse, a steady bay mare named Belle, didn't seem to mind the rain. We made our way down the muddy main street, past shuttered windows and empty porches. The storm had driven most people indoors, leaving the town feeling hollow and forgotten. That's when I saw her. Hannah Sullivan stood outside Campbell's Hotel, her dark dress soaked through despite the thin shawl she clutched around her shoulders. Her daughter pressed close to her side, both of them shivering in the morning chill. Mrs. Campbell stood in the hotel doorway, shaking her head with obvious regret. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the scene well enough. No work, no room, no help. Hannah's shoulders straightened despite the rejection. She took her daughter's hand and turned away from the hotel, her chin lifted with a pride that broke something inside my chest. They walked past my horse without seeing me. The little girl stumbled on the wooden sidewalk, her small shoes slipping on the wet planks. Hannah caught her, murmuring soft words of comfort that the rain almost swallowed. I should have ridden on, should have minded my own business, and let them find their own way. Instead, I found myself dismounting. Mrs. Sullivan. She turned, startled. Up close I could see the exhaustion in her dark eyes, the worry lines that hadn't been there in the lamplight of the saloon. But her spine remained straight, her gaze steady. Mr. Turner. Will Turner. Mr. Turner. She shifted slightly, positioning herself between me and her daughter in a gesture so instinctive, I doubted she realized she'd done it. I remember you from the saloon. You're looking for work. It wasn't a question. The answer was written in the careful mending of her dress, the worn leather of her shoes, the way she held herself like someone prepared for disappointment. I am. Her voice carried no shame, only quiet determination. I can cook, clean, mend clothes. I'm not afraid of hard work. The little girl peered around her mother's skirt, studying me with those same bright eyes that had haunted my sleep. She smiled, a shy thing that tugged at something I'd thought buried deep. There's not much work in a town this size, I said carefully. So I'm discovering. Hannah's laugh held no humor. But we'll manage. We always do. The rain picked up, driving harder against the awnings above us. The child shivered visibly, her lips taking on a bluish tint that made my chest tighten. I could walk away. Should walk away. The widow Martinez runs a boarding house on Elm Street. I heard myself saying. She might need help with laundry, cooking for her tenants. Hope flickered in Hannah's eyes before she carefully banked it. Thank you. That's kind of you to mention. It's not kindness, it's common sense. Woman traveling alone with a child, you need to be careful who you trust. The words came out harsher than I'd intended. Hannah's expression shuddered and she pulled her daughter closer. Of course. Thank you for the advice, Mr. Turner. She turned to go, but something made me call out again. Mrs. Sullivan. Yes? Martinez lives in the yellow house behind the church. Tell her Will Turner sent you. This time her smile was genuine, small but real, lighting up her tired features like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Thank you, she said simply. That's very kind. Kind. The word followed me as I watched them walk away, the woman's protective arm around her daughter's small shoulders. It followed me into the Mercantile, where I bought coffee and supplies with mechanical efficiency. It followed me to the saloon, where I ordered whiskey I didn't want, and sat in silence while rain drummed against the windows. Frank wiped down glasses, glancing at me occasionally. You look like a man with something on his mind. Don't we all? Some more than others. He set down his towel. Heard you sent that woman and her little girl to see Martinez. News traveled fast in small towns. She needed work. Lot of people need work. Don't see you helping most of them. I drained my whiskey without responding. Frank was right, and we both knew it. I'd spent 2 years keeping to myself, avoiding entanglements, refusing to care about anyone or anything. So why had I helped her? The answer came unbidden because of the way she'd protected her daughter, because of the pride in her voice when she said she wasn't afraid of hard work, because of something in her face that reminded me of Sarah's fierce independence, but mostly because of the child's smile, trusting and innocent and absolutely fearless. I paid for my drink and left without another word. The ride home felt longer than usual. Rain soaked through my coat, chilling me to the bone, but the cold outside was nothing compared to the ice that had settled around my heart 2 years ago. I'd gotten comfortable with that ice. It was safe, predictable. Kindness was dangerous. There was a crack in the wall I had built around my heart. And cracks I knew had a way of spreading until the whole structure came tumbling down. A week passed before I saw them again. 7 days of telling myself I'd done enough, that pointing Hannah toward work was where my involvement ended. 7 days of failing to convince myself completely. I was loading fence posts into my wagon outside Miller's lumber yard when I heard the laughter. High and sweet, cutting through the afternoon dust like music I'd forgotten existed, my hands stilled on the rough wood. Emma Sullivan sat on the church steps playing with a corn-husk doll while her mother swept the front porch of Martinez's boarding house across the street. The little girl was talking to her doll, spinning some elaborate tale that involved grand adventures and narrow escapes. And then the brave knight saved everyone, she declared, making her doll dance on the step. Even the scary dragon turned out to be lonely. Her mother looked up from her sweeping, smiling at the child's imagination. Hannah looked better than she had that rainy morning. Her dress was still worn, but it was clean and pressed. Her hair was neatly braided instead of hanging loose and damp. She'd found her footing. Good, that was good. I went back to loading lumber, trying to ignore the way Emma's voice drifted across the dusty street. But children have a way of making themselves heard, especially when they're determined to befriend the entire world. Mama, look! It's the nice man from the rain day. I turned to find Emma pointing directly at me, her small face bright with recognition. Hannah followed her daughter's gaze, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. Emma, don't point, she called gently. It's rude. But Emma was already scrambling down the church steps, clutching her doll as she crossed the street with the fearless confidence only children possess. My chest tightened as I watched her dodge a passing horse and cart. Hello, Mr. Turner. She stopped beside my wagon, grinning up at me with grass stains on her pinafore and dirt under her fingernails. I remember you. You helped us find Mrs. Martinez. I mentioned a name, nothing more. Mama says that's the same as helping. Emma held up her corn-husk doll. This is Rebecca. She's very brave. Would you like to meet her? Before I could answer, she was climbing onto the wagon's running board with the easy agility of a child who'd never been taught to fear strangers. Her small hands gripped the wooden rail as she settled beside me. Emma. Hannah's voice carried across the street, edged with worry. Come away from there. Mr. Turner has work to do. But Emma was already launching into an elaborate introduction between myself and her doll, complete with a detailed backstory involving Rebecca's heroic deeds and noble character. The child's enthusiasm was infectious, drawing reluctant smiles from passers-by and making the lumber yard feel less like a place of business and more like a stage for her imagination. She talks to everyone, Hannah said, arriving slightly breathless from her hurried crossing. I'm sorry if she's bothering you. She's not, I heard myself say, and surprisingly it was true. Emma beamed at me. See, Mama? Rebecca likes Mr. Turner. She says he has kind eyes. Kind eyes. If only she knew what these eyes had seen, what they'd failed to prevent. If only she knew that kindness was a luxury I'd stopped allowing myself long ago. Rebecca is very wise for a corn-husk doll, I said carefully. Emma giggled. She's not really talking, silly. I just pretend. But sometimes pretending makes things more real, don't you think? The question hit me harder than it should have. Pretending made things more real, like pretending I didn't care about strangers. Like pretending my heart was truly dead instead of just sleeping. Hannah studied my face with those dark, perceptive eyes. Emma, we should let Mr. Turner get back to his work. But Mama, Rebecca wants to know if Mr. Turner has any horses. She loves horses. I have a horse, I admitted, gesturing toward Belle, who was tied to the hitching post outside the general store. Her name is Belle. Emma's eyes widened with delight. Can we meet her, please? Rebecca has never met a real horse before. I glanced at Hannah, expecting to see irritation or embarrassment at her daughter's boldness. Instead, I found something that looked like hope, fragile and carefully hidden, but unmistakably there. If Mr. Turner doesn't mind, she said quietly. The walk to Belle took less than a minute, but it felt like crossing an ocean. Emma chattered the entire way, telling me about the boarding house, about how Mrs. Martinez made the best cornbread in 3 counties, about the cat that lived in the stable and sometimes let her pet his orange fur. Belle, accustomed to my solitary ways, seemed surprised by the sudden appearance of a small, excited child. But she was a gentle mare, and when Emma approached with proper caution and outstretched hands, Belle lowered her great head and allowed the tiny fingers to stroke her nose. She's beautiful, Emma whispered, her voice filled with reverence. Rebecca thinks she looks like a princess horse. Belle's just a working horse, I said. But watching Emma's careful attention to the mare, seeing the wonder in her face, made me remember when horses had seemed magical to me too. All horses are magical, Emma declared with absolute certainty. They carry people to adventures and bring them safely home again. Hannah laughed softly. Emma has very strong opinions about most things. That's not a bad quality in a person. No, Hannah agreed. It's not. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching Emma continue her solemn conversation with Belle. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty street, and for a moment the sharp edges of my grief seemed softer somehow. She likes you, Hannah said quietly. Children like everyone. Not everyone. Hannah's voice carried a weight I didn't understand. Emma's usually shy around men. It took her 3 days to say more than hello to Mr. Martinez. I watched Emma show Rebecca the horse, her small voice explaining every detail of Belle's appearance to her silent audience. There was something pure about the child's joy, something untouched by the disappointments that had marked my own life with scars. She's a good child, I said. She's everything to me. Hannah's words were simple, but they carried the fierce protectiveness of a mother who'd already lost too much. That's when Emma looked up at me with those bright, trusting eyes and asked the question that would change everything. Mr. Turner, do you have any little girls of your own? The world seemed to stop. The dusty street, the afternoon sun, the gentle sounds of Belle's breathing bellers, everything faded except for that innocent question and the sudden crushing weight of memory. No, I managed. I don't. Emma tilted her head, considering this information with the seriousness of a judge. That's sad. You would be a good papa, I think. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sarah and I had talked about children, had dreamed of filling our small house with laughter and tiny footsteps, but the fever that took her had stolen those dreams too. Emma, Hannah said quickly, recognizing my distress. That's enough questions. But Emma wasn't finished. She looked up at me with complete sincerity and said, if you ever want to practice being a papa, you could practice with me. And there it was. The crack in my carefully constructed wall, splitting wider with each beat of my heart. Emma's words haunted me for 3 sleepless nights. If you ever want to practice being a papa, you could practice with me. Practice being a papa. As if fatherhood was something you could rehearse for, like learning to ride a horse or build a fence. As if the dreams Sarah and I had shared could somehow be borrowed instead of buried. Thursday morning brought trouble riding hard into Millbrook. I was at Jameson's blacksmith shop, getting Belle's shoes checked, when Sheriff Coleman came galloping down Main Street like the devil himself was chasing him. His horse was lathered with sweat, and dust caked his badge. Fire, he shouted, reining up outside the saloon. Big one north of town, started in the Matthews place, spreading fast with this dry wind. The Matthews homestead sat about 5 miles out, surrounded by acres of tall grass that hadn't seen rain in 2 weeks. If the fire jumped their property line, it could take out half the county before anyone could stop it. Men poured out of buildings, grabbing buckets, shovels, anything that might help fight the blaze. I was saddling Belle when I heard Jameson curse under his breath. Martinez boarding house is right in the path. If this wind keeps up, he said, squinting at the distant smoke. Might want to think about evacuation. My hands stilled on Belle's reins. Hannah and Emma were at the boarding house. I rode toward the flames instead of away from them. The Matthews place was already lost when I arrived. Their wooden farmhouse stood like a skeleton against the orange sky, flames licking through empty windows and consuming everything they'd worked years to build. Mrs. Matthews sat in their wagon with her 3 young boys, watching their life burn while her husband and the other men fought to keep the fire from spreading. The wind was against us. Hot gusts pushed the flames toward town like an angry god driving destruction before him. Sparks danced in the air, landing on dry grass and blooming into new fires faster than we could stamp them out. "It's no use," Jack Peterson shouted over the roar of burning timber. "We need to fall back, protect the town." But falling back meant abandoning the outer farms, meant letting the fire take everything in its path until it reached the creek that ran behind Millbrook's main street. That's when I saw them. Hannah's borrowed wagon came rattling up the road from town, Emma pressed close to her mother's side. They weren't fleeing, they were coming toward the fire. I spurred Belle toward them, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What are you doing here? Get back to town." Hannah pulled her horses to a stop, her face streaked with soot and determination. "Mrs. Martinez sent supplies," she said, gesturing to the wagon bed loaded with buckets and blankets, "and there are children out here. This isn't your fight. Those are good people losing their homes." Her dark eyes flashed with stubborn fire of their own. "I won't sit safely in town while others suffer." Emma peeked around her mother, clutching that corn-husk doll like a talisman. The child's face was pale but determined, mirroring her mother's expression. "Rebecca wants to help too," she said in a small voice. Before I could argue further, a shout went up from the fire line. The wind had shifted. "I'll take the supplies," I told Hannah. "You get Emma back to safety." "I can handle a bucket as well as any man," she replied, climbing down. That's when everything went wrong. A burning branch landed in the grass between us and the main fire. Within seconds we were surrounded by flames. Belle reared, nearly throwing me. The wagon horses screamed and plunged, tangling their traces. "The horses!" Hannah shouted, struggling to control the panicking animals. I vaulted from Belle's back, grabbing the lead horse's bridle. The animal's eyes rolled white with terror, but I managed to steady him long enough for Hannah to cut the traces with a knife from the supply wagon. Free of their burden, the horses bolted toward town. Belle followed, leaving the 3 of us stranded in a circle of fire that was closing in fast. Emma hadn't made a sound, but when I looked down I saw her small hand slip into mine. Her palm was sweaty with fear, but her grip was steady. "It's getting smaller," she said quietly, watching the flames creep closer. She was right. The circle was tightening around us like a noose. The heat was becoming unbearable, and smoke burned our lungs with every breath. Hannah pulled Emma close, her own fear carefully hidden behind a mask of calm. "Stay low, sweetheart. The air is cleaner down here." But I could see what she couldn't. The flames were moving too fast. In minutes they would reach us. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. There was a small depression in the ground about 20 yards away, probably an old buffalo wallow. If we could reach it, we might survive the fire passing over us. "Listen to me," I said, taking Hannah's shoulders. "There's a low spot over there. If we can make it, we have a chance." Hannah looked where I pointed, measuring the distance against the advancing flames. "We'll never make it. Not all of us." She was right. An adult might manage it running low and fast, but Emma's short legs couldn't cover the ground quickly enough. "You take her," I said. "I'll draw the fire away, give you time." "No." Hannah's voice was fierce. "We stay together." "Hannah, be reasonable." "No." Her eyes blazed with something stronger than fear. "I won't lose anyone else." "Anyone else?" The words hung in the smoky air between us, revealing depths of loss I hadn't suspected. Emma tugged at my hand. "Mr. Turner, what if we all went together, like a family?" "Like a family." The innocent words hit me harder than the heat from the surrounding flames. That's when I understood what I had to do. I swept Emma up in my arms, her corn-husk doll crushed between us. "Hold tight to Rebecca," I told her. "Don't let go no matter what." Together we ran toward the buffalo wallow through thick smoke. Emma buried her face against my shoulder. The fire reached for us. My shirt caught flame. Hannah stumbled, but I pulled her forward. We tumbled into the depression just as the blaze roared overhead. The air was furnace hot and filled with sparks. Hannah covered Emma with her own body while I pressed against the earth. For long minutes the world was nothing but heat and smoke. Then gradually the roar faded, I raised my head cautiously. The fire had moved on, leaving behind a blackened wasteland of smoking earth and scattered embers. But we were alive. Emma was the first to speak. "That was scary," she said in a matter-of-fact voice, still clutching Rebecca. "But we stayed together like you said." Hannah sat up slowly, checking her daughter for injuries with hands that trembled despite her efforts at calm. "Are you hurt, sweetheart?" "No, Mama. Mr. Turner kept us safe." Emma looked at me with those bright, trusting eyes, just like a real papa would. And there it was again, that word that broke something inside me every time she said it. Papa. I'd carried her through fire, felt her small arms around my neck, her absolute trust in my ability to protect her. For those terrifying minutes she'd been mine to guard, mine to save, mine to love. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Somewhere between Emma's first shy smile and this moment of shared survival, she'd become more than just Hannah's daughter. She'd become the child I'd never had. Hannah was watching my face, seeing something there that made her own expression soften. "Will," she said quietly. "Thank you." But it was Emma who delivered the final blow to my carefully constructed walls. She scrambled over to where I sat in the smoking earth and threw her small arms around my neck, her corn-husk doll pressed between us. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you, Will." Will. Not Papa Will, not Father Will. Just Will. But the way she said it carried all the love a daughter gives to the man who protects her. The wall I'd built around my heart didn't just crack. It crumbled completely, leaving me defenseless against feelings I'd held back for 2 empty years. I held her close, this brave little girl who'd claimed me without permission. And for the first time since Sarah died, I let myself feel what it was like to be needed again. To be loved again. To be alive again. The morning after the fire brought something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. I sat on my porch watching sunrise paint the sky gold and pink. My back still ached where flames had caught my shirt, but for the first time since Sarah's death, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I'd found. Emma's words from yesterday echoed in my mind. "I love you, Will." Simple words that had cracked open something I thought was dead forever. She hadn't asked for permission to love me, hadn't waited for me to be ready. She'd simply decided I belonged to her, the way children decide these things, completely and without reservation. Bell nickered from the corral. I looked up to see Hannah's wagon approaching through the morning haze. Emma bounced on the seat, waving both arms when she spotted me. My chest tightened with something I'd forgotten how to name. Joy, maybe. Or hope. "Will," she called, before the wagon stopped. "We brought breakfast." She scrambled down with a covered basket Rebecca tucked under her arm. Hannah followed, smoothing her brown dress with nervous hands. There was something different about Hannah this morning. She'd taken extra care with her appearance, and there was determination in her dark eyes. "How are you feeling?" Hannah asked quietly. "Different," I admitted. Emma was already unpacking the basket on my porch table. Fresh biscuits from Mrs. Martinez, strawberry jam Mama made, and proper coffee, not that bitter stuff you make. "Emma," Hannah warned gently. "It's true, Mama. Men don't know how to make real coffee. Rebecca told me so." I found myself smiling. Rebecca seems very wise. "She is. She says you need proper taking care of." The words hung in the morning air like a gentle challenge. Hannah's cheeks colored prettily, but she didn't correct her daughter or apologize for the child's boldness. "Maybe Rebecca's right," I said carefully. We ate in comfortable silence, the 3 of us around my small table. Emma chattered occasionally about birds and clouds, while Hannah and I stole glances at each other. The blackened landscape showed yesterday's damage, but green shoots were already pushing through ash, life returning where death had passed. "The Matthews family lost everything," Hannah said. "Tom Henderson's organizing a barn raising next week." "I'll be there," I said without hesitation. Emma looked up from feeding crumbs to Rebecca. "Can we come too? I want to help." "Every barn raising needs good cooks," I told her. Her face lit up. "Really? I can do important work?" "The most important work there is." Hannah watched this exchange with wonder in her dark eyes. "Will, we need to talk." Emma immediately perked up. "Are you finally going to ask him the important question, Mama?" "What question?" I asked. Hannah's cheeks turned red. "Emma thinks she knows everything." "I do know everything that matters," Emma declared. "I know Will loves us. I know Mama loves him back, even though she gets shy, and I know we should live together like a real family." The morning held its breath. Hannah's face went pale, then red. "Emma Sullivan, that's enough." "Why is it enough?" Emma interrupted. "Why don't grown-ups say what they really mean? Out of the mouths of babes." I set down my coffee and looked at Hannah, really looked at her. Saw the trembling hands, the carefully hidden hope. "Your daughter's right," I said quietly. "Grown-ups do talk around things." Hannah's breath caught. "Will, I loved my wife more than life itself," I continued. "When she died, I thought love had died with her, thought my heart was buried in that cemetery." Emma went very still, sensing importance in these words. "But hearts don't die," I said. "They just sleep, and sometimes all it takes to wake them is a child brave enough to say I love you, without asking permission first." I reached across the table and took Hannah's hand. Her fingers were warm, real, alive. "I can't promise I won't be scared," I admitted. "Can't promise I'll always know what I'm doing, but I can promise I'll try, if you'll have me." Silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility. Then Emma spoke up. "Are you asking Mama to marry you?" "I think I am," I said, never taking my eyes off Hannah's face. "Well, it's about time," Emma declared. Rebecca was getting tired of waiting. Hannah laughed through tears she was too proud to shed. "Was she?" "She says Will's been lonely long enough, and so have we." I squeezed Hannah's hand gently. "What do you say? Think you could teach an old widower how to be part of a family again?" Hannah studied my face, seeing past grief scars to whatever was left of the man I used to be. "I think we could teach each other," she said softly. Emma whooped and threw herself into my arms. "Does this mean you're my real papa now?" Real papa. The words that once terrified me now felt like coming home. "If you'll have me," I said. "Forever and ever?" "Forever and ever." She pulled back to study me with those bright, serious eyes. "Even when you're naughty?" "Especially when you're naughty." Emma nodded gravely. "Good. Rebecca says papas are supposed to love you no matter what." "Rebecca's very wise." "The wisest." Emma settled in my lap. "When's the wedding? Can Rebecca be in it too?" Hannah laughed. "Slow down, sweetheart. These things take planning." But Emma was already spinning wedding fantasies involving flowers and cake. Her excitement pulled us forward into a future I'd stopped believing possible. "Can we have dancing?" she asked. "And pretty dresses for me and Rebecca." Hannah laughed. "We'll have the most beautiful wedding this county has ever seen." Emma clapped her hands. "Rebecca says this is the best day ever." Later that afternoon, after Hannah and Emma had returned to town with promises to come back tomorrow, I walked to Sarah's grave for the first time since the fire. The small cemetery sat peaceful in the golden light. Sarah's headstone looked exactly as I'd left it, but something inside me had changed completely. I knelt beside her marker and placed my hand on the stone. "I need to tell you something," I said quietly. "About a little girl named Emma, and her mother Hannah. About how they walked into my life and changed everything." The wind stirred the grass, and I could almost hear Sarah's gentle laughter. "You'd love them both," I continued. "Emma has your courage. Hannah has your strength. They're not replacing you. Nobody could. But they're helping me remember how to be alive instead of just surviving." I stayed there until sunset, talking to Sarah about Emma's spirit and Hannah's determination. When I rose to leave, I felt lighter, as if Sarah herself had given her blessing. The next morning brought Emma's laughter floating through my windows. I stepped onto the porch to find her in my yard, talking to Rebecca about sunrise. "The sun comes up every day, even when the night was scary," she explained to her doll. "That's what hope does. It keeps showing up until people remember how to believe in beautiful things." She paused, then continued. "Sometimes the saddest things help the most beautiful things grow. Papa Will was very dusty with sadness, but now love came like rain and he's growing again." Papa Will. She said it like established fact rather than miracle. She turned at the sound of my steps. Her face lit up and she ran toward me. "Good morning, Papa Will." As I caught her in a hug that felt like coming home, I realized she'd been right about everything. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the deepest sorrows. Sometimes healing comes disguised as a child with bright eyes and infinite faith. Sometimes family finds you when you're finally ready to stop hiding from love. "I love you too, little one," I whispered against her hair. "More than you'll ever know." From somewhere beyond the morning sky, I felt Sarah's presence, not as weight holding me to the past, but as gentle wind pushing me toward the future I was finally brave enough to embrace. The sun climbed higher, warming my face and chasing away the last shadows of grief that had held me prisoner. Today felt like the first day of the rest of my life, and for the first time in 2 years I was truly ready to live it.